The great opportunities I had by going to the Lawrenceville School was to be able to go into New York every weekend. And one of my sisters, her main boyfriend was an actor named John Cullen, who had been an understudy to Richard Burton in Honest Clear Day, You Can See Forever. He was also working with the Shakespeare rights, preparing his own production of Hamlet, which he was taking to Minneapolis. And I was allowed to observe his rehearsing with his director, and it gave me tremendous insight into the play, so I knew the play really quite intimately. He also did an excellent Oedipus Rex, and I wrote a very articulate essay on Oedipus Rex after watching his rehearsals of that and his performance, and also talking to him in detail about the play. I mean, this really gave me an intimate knowledge of both Hamlet and Oedipus Rex, and I wrote my under the supervision of my English teacher John Silver, who had done his senior thesis at Princeton University on Ezra Pound. I wrote an essay on Hamlet, which won the my junior year essay prize. I had won the essay prize the year before on something I wrote about existentialism, and these are my first theoretical interpretations. That was my first essay on philosophy. I later became a philosophy major at Harvard. And I was able to go, became a real aficionado of modern jazz, and my sister and I would go to Birdland almost every time I was in town, and so see Miles Davis playing.
Did you ever go there with your friends from Lawrenceville?
Yes, we went to another place called Cafe Bohemia.
And who would you go with?
John Michael McKenzie, because we had our own band at school. We played.
Michael McKenzie and John.
And Frank Janney, who played trumpet.
Did you go with John Douglas?
No, I never went with John. He was going to Andover at the time.
Oh, yeah.
He later became our freshman roommate. And but I remember going with Mackenzie to see Bill Evans. I think it was at the Village Vanguard, maybe possibly at the Blue Note. Then we went to this other club a lot called Cafe Bohemia, which was really wonderful, down on Bleecker Street in the Village. And there's a great Spanish restaurant down there. And I played French horn in the jazz band. And it was really quite a good band. And this is before Lawrenceville built a music building. And it was at that music building which I used to write a novella, which I later called Sister, with this character from Tennessee who had been a football player. And we later used this as to get credit for my master's degree thesis at the University of Connecticut. The thesis I got my master's degree in American and English literature there. This is before I went to Chicago to take over my grandfather's business he'd founded in 1920, Spring Packing Corporation, which after my uncle left was president.
Can you tell about the time that you guys snuck out of your dorm at night and went? Did you go swimming in the swimming pool?
Yeah, we did in the old gymnasium.
Did you used to do that all the time?
No, but we go in and we walk around on the roofs of the field house and some other buildings, and climb up the side of the buildings, and walk around. Could have broken our necks. And we were out one night with
Who were you with?
Brent Absher and David Newton, and we were coming across the quadrangle, and some housemasters came back home from being out, and they turned their lights across so they could see us coming across, and they sort of followed us as we ran into coming back into the dormitory. I was in a Raymond house at that time, and I was put on probation for 6 weeks. Couldn't go to New York or leave the premises.
That must have been a downer.
Well, sure it was a downer. We had our grades, but sort of scrapped our stuff for a while. You wanted me to talk about working on the Polaris and Apollo missions?
No, we can do that later. So then, I guess that's it for Lawrenceville. Well, what about some of the people that went there? Maybe you'd like to talk about that you were interested in later and sort of following their careers and what happened in their lives. Anybody you want to talk about from Lawrenceville?
Ottaway's career was very interesting.
Yeah.
He was my roommate at Lawrenceville and Harvard.
David Ottaway.
David Ottaway, whose family owned a whole string of newspapers in Connecticut and New York State and radio stations. And his father used to play golf with Mr. Jones of Dow Jones, and on their golf course, they made a merger deal. They would talk about it while playing golf, and he merged his company, the Ottaway newspapers, with Dow Jones, and he became responsible for buying up small newspapers and all over the country. And later, Rupert Murdoch, that Dow Jones became Wall Street Journal, and Rupert Murdoch bought out the Ottaways, I think for $100 million. David was a very, very hard-working student up at by 7:30 and down at breakfast and go to work, and later he went to Columbia and got a PhD in political science, and then went to work on the foreign desk of the Washington Post. And after having been a correspondent for the New York Times in Algeria, and later in Cairo, where he wrote a book with his wife Marina Ottaway, who was a sociologist, on the Algerian Revolution, and later on when he was in Cairo, on the Ethiopian Revolution. And I think his last books were on communism in Africa. He wrote about a book called Mandela and de Klerk, about the apartheid in South Africa.
Any other friends you want to talk about? maybe friends that you lost touch with, but you heard about what they were doing in their lives?
Well, I mean, one of my closest friendships is with Thomas Asher, who's a poet, won a National Endowment for the Arts grant for poetry, which helped him publish one of his books of poetry, and also um, taught at Vermont College for a long time. Now he lives up near Burlington, Vermont, in a town called Williamstown. And I'm actually his daughter, Robin's godfather. She lives in Ellsworth, Maine. I'm very, very, very close to Tom. He also won a grant to publish a book with the Alice James Press. He and Stratos Javieres won a grant for their poetry, one of their poetry manuscripts. It was published by Alice James Press. I think he's now writing a book about Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. Especially interested in Giordano Bruno and the way he was depicted and referred to in Finnegan's Wake.
Well, lectures increase visiting her father.
Is that right?
Travis.
Did you see her recently?
No, I talked to her on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So anybody else? I'm not talking about your tight knit group of friends from Lawrenceville. I'm talking about maybe friends that you weren't necessarily friends with at the time, or didn't spend vacations with, or go to New York with, but later on you became interested in their lives and careers.
I think Frank Janney is one of the main people. He became a professor of Spanish at Dartmouth College, and they started a publishing company called Ediciones del Norte, publishing some of the exiled writers from Latin America, like Goizuela and I think he did also Fuentes and Octavio Paz. A lot of them lived in New York City. They were sort of refugees from their country because their countries had gone through upheavals, and they had to live outside of their countries, either away from Mexico City or from places like Lima, Peru. Because he had a huge list of books. I remember one day we met at George Braziller's son, Michael Braziller, in New York, who was our distributor, and all their salesmen, to talk about the books we were coming out with. And he was an extremely close friend. He actually he sang a lot with his new wife, Laurie. They sang a lot of opera together. He did a lot of transcription of Bach pieces he transcribed them from harpsichord to guitar, and he had a wonderful voice. He's a master of classical guitar, and he did a lot of singing himself. Wonderful tenor voice. He even arranged some of my father's songs for several instruments, guitar and cello and so on. He's a great hunter, great horseman. Used to ride after the fox.
Didn't he
Fox
also,
hunting.
wasn't he also a skier?
Good skier.
Doesn't his brother own a biotech company?
His son Dan is a part of Alta Ventures, which is one of the bigger biotech venture capital companies. I think that's enough for now.